Welcome, I'm Hernan Murdoch. In this episode, we're going to take a look at types of audit evidence and provide some suggestions on what to do when you're handling sensitive evidence. To help us better appreciate and understand and navigate the different types of audit evidence, we have with us today Kathleen Crawford, who will help us better understand these dynamics and what we should do when we're doing a review and we have to choose from different types of audit evidence. Hi, Kathleen.
Hey, Hernan.
So there are different types of audit evidence. So can you help us better understand the types of evidence that we can use and how we can go about choosing which ones we want to use for a particular scenario?
Absolutely. I have a graphic for that purpose. We have a few different types of evidence, and here they are: testimonial, interviews, observation, documentary, and analytical. Testimony evidence can be seen as letters or statements. So testimony is something that we might get in tangible form through some kind of document, or we might take a statement. Someone might speak to us. That links to interviews, so discussions with the auditee, discussions with other employees, independent parties. By the way, for our viewers, auditee is a common term that we use to talk about the client, so someone who is being audited. Observation is what type of evidence we collect by watching things happen or watching people do their work. So we might observe people doing their jobs, we might watch events occurring, we could be examining property, so we observe property movement and things of that sort. This is pretty densely packed. So this particular graphic is pretty densely packed. So when you think about this, we've got talking to people, getting some kind of information through letters or statements, watching things happen. And then we get a little bit deeper in terms of the type of audit evidence. So documentary evidence can then be examined. We look for supporting information around transactions and around activities. So documentary evidence that will confirm or refute something that we believe we know. And some of that can be obtained internally as far as the organization itself, or externally, out to a customer or out to a different department, and getting information that confirms or refutes our expectation of how things work. And then finally, analytical evidence, exactly what it sounds like. We get it from analysis. So some kind of computer-generated information that is then sliced and diced in a variety of ways so that we can have a better understanding of the data behind it and confirm or refute whether the details of the data are complete and accurate as we expected them to be.
So we have quite a few choices here. And as an auditor goes about doing the work, then part of that is to determine what would be the better source of information for the purpose that they need to. Part of it might be just to familiarize themselves with something, in which case inquiry might be what they need to do at the moment. But as a result of that inquiry and that conversation and the testimony that's obtained at that point, they can then decide, okay, maybe I would like to take a look at some documents, or can you show me? So can we walk over there and they observe the work? So the first pass through could be just describing what is supposed to happen. The second one might be to observe the work. And then the third one might be to actually review the procedures documents to say whether or not there's agreement between what they said, what you saw, and what is documented as performance expectations. So we do a lot of overlapping work in some cases, because we need to make sure we can verify all of the pieces and that they're all in agreement, right? Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And that idea of multiple perspectives is important because we really do want to have a 360-degree understanding of how things work. Deeper dive in many instances so that we can really get to some people would think of it as minutia. I find it fascinating. What's the secret sauce? How does it work? So having these different techniques means, as you said, sometimes we're looking at it at a very high level. Sometimes we're looking at things really intensely detailed, because the risk of the area warrants us to pay that kind of attention to something.
Right. Now, another thing I'd like to draw some attention to is reference to third parties, because we think about it from the perspective of the auditor reviewing what's within that organization, or if you are working from our service provider, you're going in to review our client's location. But so many organizations outsource activities that it may become part of the procedure to actually work with third parties to either get documentation from them or to go visit the facility and see for yourself. So making sure your contracts have the right to audit, make sure as relates to, and the PCAOB provided some guidance as relates to SSA 18, where there's a document that is provided, a service organization control document for certain purposes, financial reporting, usually SOC 1. If you're looking at more IT-related, operational, and so on, looking at SOC 2. But either way, being able to get information from a third party can sometimes be more labor-intensive, but very, very important, because if you have critical activities being performed by a third party or at some other foreign location, you want to be able to get a sense as to what kind of risk and controls are in place and how can we rest confidently that everything is going to be okay, or as best we can, know that things are in order. So working with third parties is a very important part of this process as well.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
So as we're thinking about sensitive information, and as auditors, sometimes we are looking at documents around disciplinary action. Sometimes there might be a lawsuit that we need to review. There might be documents related to compensation and so on. So what should auditors do when they are handling sensitive documents and information?
Well, I think what we should do is to channel Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. So my reason for saying this is that we have an awesome opportunity as auditors to see how things work that normal people, that's a weird thing to say, but normal people don't get a look at. And because we have this unique reporting relationship within the organization, and we don't know what kind of evidence is going to come our way, we have to be very careful when we notice that something is especially sensitive, that we have a plan for how we're going to handle it. So let's make sure that we get it right, we acquire it correctly, we maintain and secure it correctly, and then when we're done with it, that we dispose of it correctly. So like you said, we might be looking at HR information, payroll information. We might be called in on an audit for a potential merger or acquisition. And that is something that we would have to be very, very careful with. So what's the plan and how are we going to properly secure sensitive information? I would also say that this isn't just about physical objects, it's also about data. So acquisition of data, how do we make sure that things are kept as confidential as possible and that no one can access it without official permission? And in those cases, we might need legal counsel. So legal counsel might need to be consulted on very sensitive situations.
Right. Yes. So extreme care, but also making sure that you keep everything in confidence. So very important that we are very protective of the information that we have is privileged. So from that perspective, we need to be very careful about it. So thank you very much. It was very helpful to get a better sense about the different types of evidence and what to do with sensitive evidence as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Kathleen.
My pleasure, Hernan.
If you like this series, subscribe to the ACI Learning YouTube channel to enjoy more audit-related content.